This brief presentation on the literary elements in The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway will help you to understand this week's reading assignment so that you can discuss it in depth in our 2 discussion forums. You must use at least one direct quote from the literary work and at least one direct quote from a literary expert in the 4 discussion posts that you write. The recommendations for further study folder will help you start your research. Let's start with the author's background. Ernest Hemingway was born in 1899 in Oak Park, Illinois. He did spend some time in Michigan, in Upper Michigan, and also in Florida, Sarasota, Florida. He's known for that, but mainly he's known as being an expatriate who spent a lot of time in Paris with the other expatriates and time fighting the war in Italy. He volunteered to drive an ambulance in Italy during World War I and was severely wounded. He wrote a book called A Farewell to Arms that draws a lot upon that experience, but we also see it in this book, The Sun Also Rises. He moved to Paris in 1921 and became involved in the expatriate community that included F. Scott Fitzgerald and Gertrude Stein. Gertrude Stein was a mentor for him. For Whom the Bell Tolls and The Old Man and the Sea are some of his major works. He won the Pulitzer Prize in 1953, and he won the Nobel Prize, the highest prize for literature, in 1954. He supported and wrote about bullfighting, fishing, and big game hunting safaris. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in 1961, as did some of his relatives. He suffered all his life from insomnia and a fear of death. He had a lot of conflict with religion. As for the setting, we see the story being told in cafes, bars, the newspaper office, the streets in Paris, France, cafes, bars, restaurants, hotels, streets, a lake, and especially the bullfighting arena in Pamplona, Spain. The time is the early 1920s. The lifestyle is the expatriate lost generation, and we'll be discussing this a lot in our discussion this week. There's problems with family relationships, a lot of infidelity and a lot of lack of commitment on the part of all the characters. As I mentioned before, as with Ernest Hemingway himself, this novel expresses religious beliefs that are conflicted. And as we saw with Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth, we're going to see some anti-Semitism in this novel as well. The characters are Jake Barnes. He's the narrator, first-person narrator. He's an expatriate journalist and would-be novelist. He doesn't earn his money being a novelist. He is also a wounded World War I veteran, and his wound has left him impotent, and that creates the tension in the novel, because he and Lady Ashley are in love, but it's not a love that can be fulfilled. Lady Brett Ashley is an alcoholic British socialite married to one man but engaged to Mike Campbell, another man. She thinks she actually loves Jake, but he is more realistic. And at the end of the novel, we see this, where she's saying, "Oh, it would be wonderful to be in love," and he says, "Wouldn't it be pretty to think so?" Robert Cohn is a wealthy and commercially successful Jewish American novelist in Paris. He is in love with Brett, and that causes a lot of problems in the novel. He's known for his boxing. He tends to resolve his arguments by boxing. He was good at it in college at Princeton. Mike Campbell is Brett's Scottish fiancé. He's loud, alcoholic, and bankrupt. He comes from a good family, but he does not act appropriately most of the time. He especially resents Cone and abuses him. Bill Gorton is Jake's closest friend. He's visiting from America. He's not one of the expatriates. Pedro Romero is the young bullfighter who is seduced by Brett, and this is something that the Spaniards resent, especially the hotel owner Montoya. Romero represents the correct way of living. So Brett is an influence. She is destroying society by seducing someone who represents the right way to live. Montoya is the owner of the inn. He's a bullfighting expert, and he protects Romero. The themes are bullfighting as a metaphor for life, political and religious philosophies of the expatriate lost generation. And again, this will be a theme that we need to discuss because this book represents some of the great literature. A writer's lifestyle is also a theme. A bohemian who writes authentic versus a would-be writer who dabbles in bohemianism, inauthentic, is what this book is all about. And we see Cone as a successful novelist, but he's not writing authentically. And as for Hemingway, his stated objective for writing the book is as follows: the earth abiding forever as a hero. So we'll need to think about that. The plot is fairly straightforward. We have Jake in Paris. He's a newspaper journalist and a wounded World War I veteran. He spends his time in bars with his friends, and in the opening chapter, a prostitute joins their group. Jake in Pamplona, Spain, goes fishing with Bill Gorton. He's not an expatriate, he's visiting from America, before they meet the friends from Paris so that they all can attend the bullfights. The friends argue over Lady Brett Ashley, who ignores them and instead seduces a young bullfighter. There's a lot of literary criticism about Lady Brett Ashley and her role in this novel. The group splits up and returns to their normal routines in other cities. Jake in Paris returns to his life as a newspaper correspondent and meets Lady Brett Ashley, who wants to believe that love is possible, but Jake doesn't agree with her. As you would expect with a Nobel Prize-winning author, there's a lot of symbolism. You will need to do a lot of research to understand what this book really means. Bullfighting is a symbol for the way life should be lived. Lady Brett Ashley stands for the deteriorating old money society that destroys innocence. For example, Romero, the bullfighter. Because those who do not have to earn money pursue happiness at the expense of those who do. So this is going to remind us of other books, in particular, The House of Mirth. Another theme is novels as opposed to newspaper stories represent a lifestyle that cannot be sustained, but still the goal is to write an authentic novel. We're going to make connections between this novel and the type of writing and the expatriate lifestyle, the international reporting of news, and the imperfectionist. The point of view and writing style is intriguing. Using a first-person technique, Ernest Hemingway uses symbolic descriptions and detailed dialogue as well as first-person narration to tell the story. Now, in some of his other work, he strives for more of an objective third-person style where he uses dialogue and descriptions. And we see that. Even though we have a first-person narrator, we see that there is a sense of being objective, of relying on the characters to tell the story through their words, and the descriptions are symbolic. We don't have so much of a voice as we did with Austen, for example, the author making a lot of judgments about the characters. The narrator is expatriate Jake Barnes, a wounded World War I veteran who cannot make a commitment and instead surrounds himself with dysfunctional friends who clash with each other. Uh, as I mentioned, this is not an easy novel to understand. It may appear to be deceptively simple, but you will need to do a lot of research. And the recommendations for further study folder will help you to start your research this week. If you have any questions, please let me know.